Welcome, everyone. Thanks for attending today. My name is Barry Sponsler. I'm a solution consultant at Xtoll, and I'm going to be delivering today's webinar, which is Drivers and Outcomes to Modernizing Your Integration. I've been in this space many years, and I'm sure most of you have. And one thing that we all know, is that in any kind of B2B e-commerce implementation, there's tons of things going on, trading partners, documents, communications, but we know that it's constantly changing. And that's a challenge that all of us face every day in our jobs. It's my contention, and I think that other folks would agree with me, that it's the ability of the enterprise to react quickly to changes in the B2B e-commerce environment. I mean, things change constantly, and so it's really up to us to figure out how to make those changes and adapt. It's going to directly affect how the company moves along, whether it's growth, acquisitions, how long it takes to turn a new customer into a paying customer, your overall customer satisfaction with their interactions with you, how much it costs the organization to process orders and invoices and things like that. Many people sort of resist change. I view change as like an opportunity to learn, to grow, and make things better. So what I'm going to address today is really how can the enterprise change these quickly and easily, and at the same time sort of mitigating our risk. There's always some inherent risk, but how can we sort of push that down and then obviously keep costs under control? That's really sort of the big challenge, is blending all those things together. Quick, easy, reduce risk, and meanwhile, let's not spend the entire nugget. Let's make sure we can do this in a reasonable price. So I've identified, and I'm going to discuss today, 4 primary drivers that I've talked with prospects and customers about what causes them to change or think about changing their e-commerce platform, B2B e-commerce platform. So one of the biggest ones is many enterprises are running very sort of old EDI or other integration platforms that are running on either old hardware or old software. They have a very limited set of functions and things like that. And then when new things come up, this causes them to look at their platform and their strategies. Another one, and this is one of the most powerful ones, is that you land a new customer or you have a big existing customer that comes to you and says, hey, we're changing the way we do stuff and you guys need to change along with us. Another very common one is that folks are running on older ERP systems or homegrown type applications, and then all of a sudden it comes down from above that guess what, we're going to SAP, we're going to Oracle, things like that, and all the infrastructure has to change, hardware, software, including the integration platform. And another one is, especially in today's sort of fast-paced, dynamic business environment, very competitive market out there, is that sometimes the way companies do things as far as onboarding new trading partners or just initiating new integration projects in general takes way too long because of the things that are associated with actually bringing these types of projects into production. And so they're like, we need to find a different way. We got to find a different way of doing B2B e-commerce because these, 6 months to onboard a trading partner is just unacceptable, those kinds of things. So these are, I'm sure there's more, but these are 4 that I'm going to talk about today that I've seen a lot recently. So we'll go over each one individually here. So what are some of the challenges or problems with legacy EDI integration platforms? Well, a lot of times when those platforms aren't very adaptable or very easy to change or initiate new projects, you lose revenue because you don't have the right capabilities yet. You can't process XML, you can't process spreadsheets or something like that, and then that results in sort of poor scorecard ratings with your customers. A lot of times, because there's very little validity checking, there's no way to scrub the data before it gets into your back end. You have a lot of high error rates, tons of exceptions. It turns out to be a nightmare. Many of these older systems, it's really hard to get new trading partners on board or to go in and change an existing map. They come in and say, well, I'm going to upgrade from version 4010 to version 5010, and that's really challenging in some older systems. And then the other thing too is, these systems, every year you're paying, you got to pay new license. I'm adding a couple more cores, or the maintenance fee is going up, and these kinds of things. Or, one of my guys retired, and now I have to train someone else. So it's hard sometimes finding training, or challenging to keep paying maintenance on platforms that don't really do the job for your company. So those are some issues with legacy platforms. The next one is the new integration requirements. Whether it's a brand new customer, or whether, let's say, it's an existing customer that then contacts you and says, hey, I'm changing my data format or something, or new communications requirements. So we have, a lot of times you'll go from an EDI type data exchange into a non-EDI, where they say, well, guess what, our new interface is XML, so we're going to start sending XML instead. Also, too, many companies say, hey, guess what, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to just put up a portal, and you need to come in and pull down all your orders. And by the way, you need to post all your invoices up to that portal also. New communications protocols. They say, guess what, we're not doing FTP anymore. We're going AS2, and you guys need to adapt. Or, and this is a big one lately, especially in healthcare and a couple other industries, is that there's many more SLAs being put in place now. And many of the older platforms, or maybe your current platform, just can't meet the requirements that are being defined by the SLA. Another big one is changing your primary ERP, WMS, TMS, whatever it ends up being. You're either changing to a new one, or you're getting rid of some old ones. And so some of the things associated with that is they're going from, let's say, an iSeries-based system to Windows. It's going to run on a bunch of servers in some data center somewhere. And now that's going to require you to look at changing your whole B2B e-commerce infrastructure. Obviously, putting in a new primary system, a new CRM, something like that, that's going to drive this change. Many companies are moving one or more of their primary applications to the cloud. Things like Salesforce are becoming really prevalent, and so they're running back-end systems, and they're running Salesforce. So there's a bridge that needs to happen there that perhaps your old platform can't deal with. And then, of course, there's the old M&A. You're either buying folks or you're being acquired, and so that in itself requires a lot of reconsideration of your B2B e-commerce platform. And the last one we talked about before is, bringing on new partners or deploying new projects. A lot of times based upon either the company's expanding, maybe it's I just worked with an Italian company who just put a big location right outside of Chicago, so they're coming into new markets, and it's new types of B2B requirements that they didn't have when they were located just in Italy. Your sales force is out there, pounding the pavement, bringing in new customers, or perhaps you're switching one of your primary vendors. Well, that's going to require some changes to your B2B platform. Many companies now are running multiple applications behind their firewall, sort of specific best-of-breed type of things, and they need to move data between those applications. So you're running a primary ERP system, but you're also exposing some kind of portal to your customers that's yet another application, and you also have some kind of warehouse management application or something that's not part of your ERP, and you have to be able to move data easily and accurately between these multiple systems behind your firewall. And once again, the whole M&A thing sort of comes in here, is associated with any merger and acquisitions. It's the assimilation of and dealing with any new trading partners or projects that are required as a result of those types of activities. So now what? What do we do now? So now we have all these various things. People are making demands on you or your department to make these changes rapidly, accurately. You're faced with a whole bunch of challenges because your existing platform either can't do it, or it would be extremely difficult or disruptive or risky or something like that. So what can we do? So is your company experiencing one or more of those drivers that we talked about? And if yes, then what really are your options? Well, I would propose today that we would embrace what, or you would embrace what we would call modern EDI. And so EDI, it's funny how EDI has sort of taken on, or has taken on, sort of a different meaning lately, especially with some of the non-traditional companies that I've been working with, is that I've always thought of EDI as strictly like X12 and Edifact. But many companies refer to EDI in a much more generic sense of electronic data interchange, which is really, what it stands for, but they just lump everything in there. So no matter what type of document it is, they're calling it EDI. So, I'm going to exchange flat files. Well, they call that EDI because it's the electronic exchange of data. So this whole modern EDI concept is what I'm going to discuss with you. And of course, this isn't your father's EDI. It's things are way different now than, let's say, back in, let's say, even the 80s or the 90s, the kinds of things that we have to be able to deal with now. So I want to take a couple minutes and review some of the ideas that I would associate with modern EDI as opposed to what could be referred to as classic EDI. So, back in the day, it was just X12 Edifact. Everybody knew what was going on. Sure, you had your folks that would abuse the standards and things like that, but basically, you knew it was going to be one or two of those types of documents, and that's what it was. And you could build systems around those. And nowadays, not only do you have to support standard X12 and Edifact, but you also have tons of different flavors of XML. Everybody can produce spreadsheets. They're becoming a lot more common as a data exchange format. And then you have various flat file formats, especially in the SAP world. I've come across a number of accounts where SAP, big SAP users are now just using iDocs as their data exchange format. They're not even bothering to translate into X12 or Edifact anymore. They're just saying, guess what? I can crank an iDoc out of my system. I'm just going to put that iDoc, send it over the wire to you, and you guys need to deal with it. So those types of things are becoming much more common as far as document types. Normally, in the in classic EDI context, it was sort of really straightforward communications protocols. Okay, what do you want? You want FTP. Okay, you want a VAN. Okay, then of course, AS2 came on board and has become quite prevalent, and SFTP, those types of things. But now, in the modern EDI context, is because you basically have to support multiple file syntaxes or file data structures, you also need to be able to move data anywhere and everywhere. So you got to be able to move it quickly and easily behind the firewall, inside the firewall, outside the firewall, up to the cloud, database to database, all these kinds of things. So this is much more comprehensive than the classic EDI. Going to the sort of processing flexibility that's required nowadays. Before, it was pretty simple, inbound, outbound, everybody knew the score, things were sort of very straightforward, there wasn't a whole lot of magic there. And now you have virtually all of these different types of things that need to be handled. For instance, if it's a network failure, the notification needs to go to the IT infrastructure team. If it's a purchase order, it needs to go to the customer support team. But if it's an invoice, it needs to go to the accounting team. All these types of things. Your processes, your error notifications, and things are infinitely more complex in modern EDI as opposed to classic. Resource integration, how things talk to each other. Before, there was a lot of sort of hard coding, a lot of sort of fixed, I'm pulling and pushing from these things. And now we need to be able to react to all types of data sources and targets, and whether it's internal or external. And then also we need to be able to do it in a sort of object-oriented, reusable type fashion, so that you're not you're not building everything from scratch, but you have sort of a model type environment where things are already there, and you just sort of repurpose the same things, much more as an object-oriented type approach, or just a more template-based integration pattern-based approach. So it's a much different way of thinking in the modern EDI as far as how you're going to integrate with the various sources and targets of data. And then another thing that's really changed, or that's really different between classic EDI and modern EDI, is the way that the exposure of the data as it's moving through the system, both in the technical and non-technical context. So, back then it was sort of like, the old, I used to be a hardcore programmer, and I can remember back in the day when people would ask for things, the classic answer was, you'll get what I give you and you're going to be happy with it. And that doesn't really fly anymore. Now everybody wants everything exposed, dashboards and being able to go and pull their own reports and these kinds of things without having to sort of go through any kind of IT staff or programming staff intervention. So modern EDI has to make the data much more visible in all different kinds of contexts, from CFO level to customer service level to IT network resource level. So there's and you really want to push the reporting back to the user community. The IT or the EDI, the B2B e-commerce department doesn't need to be the hub of all these requests. You need to push this stuff back as much as you can to the actual people that need and want and use the data on a daily basis. So here's sort of, this diagram represents what I would call silos. This is, I see this quite commonly in the prospects and customers that I work with, is that over the years, especially folks that have been doing this for many, many years, different things happened and things were approached from a very tactical standpoint. So, okay, we need to put in an EDI system. So they bought an EDI translator, they went through the training, they hooked it up, they got their trading partner community on board, but there was really no thought of doing other types of things because that was the immediate need. And so they sort of dealt with that need and moved on. And then, of course, some other type of relationship would come up and they sort of bought a standalone solution for that, or they did a bunch of custom programming, like, oh, well, we'll never have to do this again. So let's just have, Sammy, the software developer, just build this thing out for us, and we'll just play on. So what happens is companies end up with all these various systems and various applications. Some are purchased, some are homegrown, to address the various integration requirements internally and externally, and to deal with the various communications protocols and data structures that they have to move across. And of course, ending up in the bottom here, whether it's going into your ERP system or some sort of database or some kind of BI tool. So, situations change, budget pressures, resource constraints, these various types of things, and many companies end up with these sort of silos. And what silos basically produce is a bunch of things that need a lot of maintenance, a lot of very specialized technical skill sets, a lot of key man dependency. Joe Jones built this thing for us, and he's on vacation, and now it broke, and nobody knows how to fix it. Right? And you end up, with vulnerabilities and things like that. So I see this a lot with customers and prospects that I work with. And so really, if you could wave a magic wand and, get to B2B integration Nirvana, here's what you end up with. You end up with an application in the middle that can handle any communications protocol, any data syntax, runs on virtually almost any common platform, and it can push and pull data basically in any format from anywhere and do whatever it needs to, all while exposing data in the dashboard, while sending appropriate error notifications to the right staff, and also providing sort of a separation between the technical staff and the user staff. And so that's what the X-Full platform represents, is that we can do this, and it allows you to sort of standardize and consolidate your various integration tools into one. So what is a modern EDI platform? What are some of the characteristics of a modern EDI integration platform? So the first thing is it needs to be easy. Some of these older tools and some of the custom-built tools that folks have are extremely difficult to sort of learn, understand, maintain. They're not intuitive, these types of things. So you should have simple UI. You should be able to see your source and target elements. You should be able to drag and drop these kinds of things for standard sort of mapping. You should be able to support, basically, it's the old yes we can, no matter what comes your way, syntax-wise, communications-wise, or project scope-wise, you should be able to say yes. The other thing, too, is it should be sort of model-driven. When you discover, it's the whole concept of integration patterns. So you should be able to build your integration infrastructure in a way that sort of build once, use many. You shouldn't have to repeat the same types of things over and over and over again. Your platform shouldn't restrict you to doing it that way. And then you should also, too, getting back to the integration pattern ideas, that once you established a pattern, so let's say a standard integration pattern for your company would be 850 in, 856, 810 out. Once you've established that you have 112 trading partners and you're exchanging the exact same set of documents, versions aside, but the basic X12 document structure like that, then you should be able to sort of build a golden image of that and then replicate that in a manner that is automated, highly accurate, things like that. So that's some of the characteristics of a modern EDI platform. There's a couple more. Your platform should be expandable and scalable, so that basically what happens is you're only right now, you're sort of in growth mode and you're only exchanging 1,000 documents a day. But through merger, acquisition, and opening of 15 new stores, you're now exchanging 10,000 documents a day. So can your platform just scale up, without having to rip the guts out of it or redo all your maps or switch operating systems or anything like that? So your platform should be able to do that easily. Your platform should also contain tons of automation and event management features. It should be able to be an event-driven system, so that when various things happen in your network, or based upon communications events, based upon insertion of records into database tables, based upon the arrival of a file in a system folder, based upon, let's say, a notification API call type of thing, that all these things, all your integration processes should be able to be automated. Because, in the best of worlds, we always like to refer to as, our platform is like the refrigerator sitting there in the corner. It's just going to keep on chugging and chugging and chugging. You'll never hear a word from it unless there's an error associated with it. But everything should be automated to the greatest extent possible and event-driven as much as possible. Your platform should also be able to monitor the activity that's going through it, and then report to various tracking systems, report databases, portals, dashboards, whatever that is, in order to expose the business to the data that's moving through the system. And then another really important thing is that different integration requirements require different methods, and so there should be a capability in your modern EDI platform for real time, so that things can happen in real time, or asynchronous, so that you send something in and then something happens, and 2 hours later you send the response back to them. So those are some more characteristics there of what you should be looking for. So in summary, change is coming if it hasn't already, to your integration environment. And really, I love this thing here by Garland, is that because it can be, or you could think of it as being very applicable to companies, and especially in the B2B e-commerce, is that the things that survive are the things that can change. And, in some ways that's, professionally and personally, right? You have to just keep on changing, because like the first slide is the only thing constant is change. It's constantly changing. And so is your enterprise experiencing any of the drivers that we discussed, the legacy platforms, new requirements, new platforms, these kinds of things? And if they are, then if it's happening, then you really need to seriously consider embracing the modern EDI concept. And then we would hope that you would select us as your B2B integration vendor that supports the modern EDI features and functionality that we've discussed previously. So once again, my name is Barry Sponsor. Thank you very much for attending today and listening. And feel free to contact me at any time, either by my phone or through email. I'd be more than happy to discuss some of these or any other issues that you might have related to B2B e-commerce and see if there's some way that I can help you. So thank you again, and hope to talk to you all some point soon.